This is going to be, dodging all the shade these realtors are going to be throwing at me after they watch this module. This is going to be the heavy module. So this is at least of part one, right, of module one. This is going to be the heaviest part. Why and when you want to ditch the agent. So let's start with when, because that's the easier part. When you want to ditch the agent is undoubtedly in a hot market. I don't know how to do like fire. I haven't done fire since like, I don't know if that looks like fire, but I used to draw flames all the time as a kid. In school, I would do this total tangent. I was obsessed with drawing like old classic trucks with like flames on them, but I'm out of touch. So undoubtedly in a hot market is when you're going to want to ditch your agent. Why? Because what happens is when you call up, you as a buyer, call up a listing agent. Here's the details. That listing agent will instantly see dollar signs when you're calling. And the reason for that is you have to understand, you kind of have to understand how, this is going to be a little bit deeper of a dive, but you kind of have to understand how these agents are paid, right? I don't think that we've kind of touched on that yet. So you have to understand how these agents are paid. And they're paid via, maybe you know this, but they're paid via, I think commission has 2 M's, commission, right? So a buyer's agent, or any agent really, works off of commission. They don't get a salary. They don't get, there's no work bonuses or anything like that. They get paid whenever they sell or help someone buy a house. So you have to understand that and think deep on what that means, right? So I'll get into that later. But they get paid on a commission. And so when often, I'll tell you this, often that commission is somewhere between 4 to 6% of the entire purchase price, right? That's not like, a part of it or anything like that. It's the entire value. So that $500,000 house, 6% of that is going to be $30,000, right? So 30K. Hope I don't have anybody here to math check me on that, but I'm going to say 30 grand, right? So a $30,000 commission is on the line. I should do that math. It sounds right. When somebody's selling a $500,000 house. So $30,000, which means that if it's split, let's say that often what it has been is that there would be some sort of split. And it's always different. They could be cheaping them out, could be 4 and 2, could be 3.5, 2.5, could be 3 and 3, could be flat, right? So let's just go easy math and let's just say it's 3%. So it would be the buyer's agent, I'll just go BA and SA, right? So a lot of the time they would say BAC, SAC, but buyer's agent commission, right? So it's going to be, let's just, like I said, easy math, 3% and 3%, right? Often the seller's agent gets a little more, whatever, but easy math is 3%, 3%. So that's going to break down to 15K, right? 15K, we'll say 15K, 15K, okay? And so when you call up, here's the thing. When you call up and you say, hey, I'm unrepresented and I want to make an offer on this house, right? All of a sudden, the seller's agent is instantly, I don't care what they say. Their mind immediately goes to, this is how they put food on their family's table, right? This is how they live. So they only get paid when they sell a house or buy a house. So the seller's agent, when you say I'm unrepresented, their mind instantly goes to, oh my gosh, I can keep that other $15,000, right? They can keep that other $15,000. So now they're looking at this 3% going away, and they're going to keep the entire 30 grand, right? That's huge. That's massive. Like, think about like how that affects your life, right? Like if you only sell a couple houses a year and all of a sudden somebody's calling up saying that, hey, I'm unrepresented and you can keep the buyer's agent commission, that, I mean, you can't tell me, agents will tell you this, but you can't tell me that you're not going to be biased a little bit towards presenting that offer a little bit stronger to your seller, right? If you're the listing agent. So that's ultimately in a hot market where it's very competitive. Of course, they're going to say, I want to get my seller the most money. Of course, the seller is going to be attracted to the highest offer. But if you can get that seller's agent to just give a little nudge to just make the seller feel extra confident, extra happy with your offer as the potential buyer, they're going to do that. They're going to want to go through that effort when you are coming in unrepresented. So in a hot market, you want to kind of come in unrepresented, right? Just because of that. So that's kind of the big ticket, I would say, is, why would somebody go unrepresented? It's in a hot market where your offer is going to stand out because there's no buyer's agent commission to be paid, right? So that's different, or that's one thing. The other thing would be, like if you're on a budget, let's say you're on a budget, right? So here's what not a lot of people know is right now it's September 10th, 2024, right? In 2024, there's been a massive shift in the real estate industry to where you as the buyer, if the seller does not want to pay, it's been status quo. I'll start with this. It's been status quo for a long time that the seller is responsible. It's going to come out of their proceeds for paying both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, right? That's been the case for as far as ever, whatever. But now there's been a shift because of this lawsuit. Look up NAR settlement, NAR, National Association of Realtors. Look up the NAR settlement and you'll find that anytime you're going to go tour a house with a buyer's agent, anytime they're going to walk you into a house, if they're a realtor, they need to have you sign an agreement, a buyer's agent agreement that states you will pay BAC, buyer's agent commission, right? You're going to pay their buyer's agent commission. Now, let's say it's that 3%. What does that mean for you, right? If the seller so chooses, and in a hot market, this is where I guarantee this is going to start happening. But if the seller chooses to not pay the buyer's agent commission, which is fully in their right, and now the seller or the listing agent has to negotiate this and has to get them to sign an agreement saying they will pay the buyer's agent commission. But when things start heating up and it's a really hot seller's market and sellers are getting greedy, bet your butt that they're not going to want to pay this buyer's agent commission anymore because they want to keep 3%, $15,000 on a $500,000 house, right? Yeah, I want to keep that. And it's a hot market, so my house is going to sell anyways, right? So you are going to have to pay that $15,000 that we talked about earlier, the 3%, right? So if you're going to have to pay that and you're on a budget, you're going FHA loan to get as low of a down payment as possible. You're having your mortgage broker shop around for, lowest rates and all this other stuff, right? You're trying to get your payment as low as possible, your down payment as low as possible. Well, now you're going to have your down payment. Okay, you're going to have your down payment. You're going to have your closing costs. And you're going to have the BAC, buyer's agent commission, right? So I'll tell you this. I made a video on this on Instagram, but really it goes somewhere between 2 to 5% is typical closing costs, but we'll just say 3% to keep it easy math and average because we already calculated 3% on a $500,000 house. BAC is going to be, let's just go with that 3%, right? So if you're going to have all of these, everybody thinks about your down payment and you're like, oh, I only have to put 3.5% down on a house, right? Well, down payment, I think I was doing this math earlier. The down payment on that house, but I don't want to look stupid, is here. Let's get a calculator out real quick. I bet you somebody watching this video has already calculated it, but I'm a dum-dum. $17,500, okay? So you're gonna have 17.5K, okay? I'm gonna say 17.5K for your down. Your closing costs are gonna be 15, and your BAC is gonna be 15, okay? Okay, which puts you at a grand total 15, 30, 45, 47.5. 47,500. Okay. If you're on a budget and you're thinking, oh, every agent tells you it's only 3.5%, you can go as low as 3.5% down to buy a house. I'll tell you that these closing costs are hefty. They're a lot heftier than people often expect. What happens is you have to bring gift funds in from loved ones at the end of the road, because you're like, holy crap, like there's that much in closing costs. It's loan fees, title fees, escrow fees, like all your mortgage broker's fee, like it all gets tacked in there, right? So your closing costs are going to be hefty. But then now, so previously you were responsible for doing the down payment, the closing costs, which was already, on a $500,000 house, you're already at what, $32,500? $32,500. Now tack on your buyer's agent commission in order to buy an average house in the United States at the lowest. Technically, you can get 0% or 0 down loans, USDA, but at the lowest, like traditional loan, which is a Federal Housing Association, FHA loan of 3.5% down, even with that, you're still going to have to bring in $47,500 or more, depending on closing costs and stuff like that. So, I mean, do you have that? Like, if you do, cool, but most people, I can guarantee, do not have upwards of almost $50,000 sitting in a bank account to go out and buy a house. And so this affordability problem is just getting worse and worse and worse, especially when things like this happen, where the buyer is now responsible for the buyer's agent commission, and which is why it's incredibly important for you to understand all this so that you can make the decision on, hey, if I want to save, this extra $15,000, or I want to be able to afford the house that I want to buy, and I don't have the extra down payment of $15,000, go unrepresented, right? That's a strong option. So, and it'll also make your offer more competitive. So that's kind of the big piece on, really when, right? That was just when. that was when you want to go without this agent. A little bit of why, because, biggest part of why, I'll kind of start there, is, let me just shift this over. The biggest part of why is really, like I said earlier, understand how they're paid. So let's just walk in some realtor shoes for a second. I'm a realtor, and it's hard out there for me to go out and get listings. Like, think about that. Like, how do you go find people who want to sell their house, right? I mean, it's kind of a difficult job. But, finally, I've got somebody who's either going to sell or buy a house. But if I'm doing this full time, there's no salary. There's no way for me to live other than off of my last commission that I got. So I'm living, I'm budgeting according to the last commission that I got, kind of hoping and expecting that I'm going to sell a house, I don't know, in the next, couple months. And so I can get another commission to keep living. And so when somebody comes and says, hey, I want to buy a house, right? And they say, hey, I found a house. Cool. Let's sign a buyer's agent agreement. Cool. I found a house. Let's go tour it. What are you thinking as you're walking that house with them? Are you thinking, I hope this is in their best interest, and I hope that, they're just so happy with this? Or are you thinking all along the way, I wonder what I'm getting paid. I wonder what the seller is willing to pay in the commission. I wonder if this is the one that they're going to say yes to so that I can eat next week, right? That is not a good, it's not a good setup of of a wage, right? It's not a good setup for somebody who, let's go back to your shoes, who, if you're wanting to buy a house, and a house is statistically the largest investment that you'll make with your money, right? In your life, really. It's statistically the largest investment that you'll make in your life. You are putting the keys of the vehicle in which you're going to go make that investment in the hands of somebody who gets paid only when you perform. Think about that for a second. Only when you perform. So are they going to have your best interests in mind? Or is there going to be a little bit of a nudge to, hey, don't you like this? Hey, don't you like that? They're going to make the house seem a little better in your eyes than it probably is or should be, right? So here's the ticket. I'll tell you this. Story time. So when we were buying our house, when we were buying our primary residence, this was like before, all our investment stuff. The agent that we had would like blatantly, not even like hiding it, would blatantly, every time I would send an address to them, or I would send, a property listing or an address or whatever, they'd pull it up on the MLS, and instantly, the first thing, they wouldn't even look at, photos, they wouldn't look at anything. They would just scroll down and they would go straight to BAC. This was back in the day when you could actually put what the seller's agent was going to pay the buyer's agent on the MLS. So they would go to the MLS on their phone, they would scroll all the way down straight to the commission portion, and it would say, sell or BAC, whatever, 2%. And they'd be like, oh, this seller's agent is cheaping out the buyer's agent. Oh, would you be cool covering, I charge, minimum 2.5%. Would you be okay covering that? I thought that was the most almost rude thing to be doing to somebody who's in the middle of trying to buy a home for their family to, be happy. And there's this exciting, moment and everything. And all of that, ultimately should be hashed out prior, but it's just abrasive is what it is, right? And it's kind of annoying. So ultimately the buyer's agent, this is the thing to understand. The buyer's agent is constantly thinking about what they're getting paid and when. The commission is the only way that they live, is the only way that they put food on the table, is the only way they pay for the gas to get to your appointment, all these things, right? So when you're touring house after house after house after house, you're going to notice they're going to start pushing you a little bit because, being in their shoes, it would be kind of annoying to tour, 50 houses that somebody doesn't make an offer on or never wins the offer or whatever, or doesn't always find something wrong with the house. And so there's friction in terms of, hey, they only get paid when you perform, right? When you do something. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded of an answer to that one. But, we already talked about cost savings, 3%. Here's a big piece though that I haven't really touched on with cost savings. And this is, you have to give this some deeper thought. You have to understand how, how things work inside of the transaction. Not a lot of people know this. When you go to, after inspection periods are done, what you're going to ask for is seller concessions. So you're going to ask for them to fix something, or instead of fix it, you're going to ask for money off of the purchase price so that you can fix it, right? Or for them to bring, or a big one right now, rate buy downs, right? Everybody wants a rate buy down because interest rates are so high. So seller contributes a little extra money that allows you to buy whatever, half a point off of your interest rate, changes your mortgage payment every month pretty substantially. So what not a lot of people know is that there's actually a cap. There's a cap to that concession amount. So sorry, new day, battery died yesterday, had to grab kids, XYZ, doesn't matter. I really wanted to come back though and circle back in detail to this seller concession potential issue that you will run into. Because if your agent, we're going to go seller concessions, okay? This could be an entire module in itself, honestly. If your agent is telling you that, hey, Jim, Carrie, don't worry about the buyer's agent commission. Yes, you're responsible for paying for it. That's always been the case. And I'll get it from the seller's agent, right? I split the commission with the seller's agent. When, not if, when sellers start realizing that they have the full ability and opportunity to keep the buyer's agent commission, they're not responsible for it, never have been, but now it's spelled out. So when sellers start deciding to keep the buyer's agent commission, which is upwards of 3%, $15,000 on a $500,000 house they're selling, it's a lot of money. I would keep it. And especially in a hot market, then sellers are absolutely going to start doing that. So that option is going to be off the table, right? And your buyer's agent is going to say, hey, look, Mr. Buyer, when you're signing this buyer's agent agreement, it says that you're responsible for 3%, but I negotiate that from the seller's agent. Okay, cool. We just killed that option, right? Oh, and even if that doesn't happen, this is what they say. Even if that doesn't happen, you still will not have to bring it to the table in form of like cash out of your pocket at closing, because what we'll do is we'll negotiate it as a seller's concession, right? So we'll just get a seller's concession out of them. This is where we have friction. This is where we have potentially big problems, right? So let's say that Jim and Carrie finally found their dream home, right? I don't know. Forgive my drawings, but let's say that Jim and Carrie finally found their dream home. Oh, let's draw them, okay? Because they're going to be holding hands, so excited. Boop. They're holding hands. Carrie, she's got long hair. And Carrie says, oh my gosh, Jim, this is the house that I want. And Jim says, okay, darling, let's do it. Let's pull the trigger, okay? And then they've got big bad Mr. Strong agent over here. His big muscles. He's got dollar signs in his eyes because his clients finally, I don't know what that's like the like fancy wavy hair that agents always have. I don't know. So anyways, he's excited because his clients have finally chosen to buy this house, right? So knowing what we know about how buyer's agents are paid, right? They're paid off a commission. So he's expecting a BAC 3%, okay? So he's due 3%, but the seller has said, no way. I don't know why his hands are down. I don't know, no way. He's not paying the buyer's agent commission. He's keeping it, right? So Jim and Carrie are responsible for buying this house, okay? They are responsible for paying for it. So what do most people do? Most people are going to actually go, they're not going to pay for it cash. They're going to go to, you guessed it, a big bank, okay? Big windows, lots of windows, money is here, cool. So the bank is going to fund the purchase to the seller of this house, okay? So the bank is actually the one who's going to pay for this house. And what the bank wants to ensure is that Jim and Carrie, who are great people, but they don't know them very well, they want to ensure that they have some sort of skin in the game in form of what they call a down payment. And so the down payment, let's say that Jim and Carrie are going 5%, okay? So 5%, very common, it's a conventional loan at that point. You can go conventional loan. It looks a little better in your offer, all these things. So they decide, I want a conventional loan, but I only want to put 5% down, right? Well, on a 5% down loan, their concession cap, is 3%. They probably didn't know that when they were looking for houses. And now they have found their dream home and they have to pay for it. They can only put 5% down. That's what they budgeted for. They can only put 5% down. That's what they budgeted for because they knew they would have to put money down. They knew they'd have to pay closing costs. And their agent said, don't worry about bringing the commission money because I'll get it from the agent or the seller, right? Now, the rubber is hitting the road where The seller has said, no, I will not pay that buyer's agent commission. And now they are responsible for paying that, right? So, okay, let's follow our concession idea. But the problem is 3% is their cap, and it's all going to the buyer's agent. Now, if during inspections they actually found stuff, let's say they found a roof needs repair. Let's say they found the HVAC is on its last leg. Maybe there's soft spots in the floors, right? The plumbing, maybe there's some leaks somewhere nobody knew about. There's all kinds of stuff that can pop up, but one of the most important ones also is that, like, in our market currently, interest rates are very high. So a lot of buyers, a lot of Jim and Carries out there are expecting a rate buy down, okay? And that rate buy down often comes from seller concessions, okay? Seller often contributes some money to buy down the rate for the potential buyer, but he cannot do that anymore because his concessions went to paying this buyer's agent. I hope that makes sense because it's really, really, really important. As time goes on, more and more sellers will decide to cross their arms and say, no way, I'm not paying buyer's agent commission. That's a lot of money I'm not responsible for. And so the buyers will have to bring it. And when buyers are budgeting for buying a house with a lower rate, lower mortgage payment, but they're maxing out their allowable purchase price of $500K, which is the average national U.S. home price, when they're expecting a rate buy down, they can't do it because their agent was paid through concessions. And on top of that, they have some serious stuff that they're going to be responsible for down the line. Seller won't fix it. He'd rather just give concessions, but he can't give concessions because it was all eaten up by that buyer's agent. That's why you need to go unrepresented. That's why you need to be knowledgeable. That's why this entire course is important, because you need to know these things. You need to know that your cap on concessions, if you're less than 10% down on a conventional loan, is 3%. And your agent is telling you, hey, don't worry, I'll get my commission from seller concessions. Because you find all these things and you were expecting a rate buy down and you can't do any of that now, and you can't afford the dream house that you finally found yourself on Zillow or Redfin, and the agent is due a commission so you can't afford it, right? Welcome to Unrepresented.